Welcome back, thanks for tuning into our channel. Where are you watching from? Drop in a comment. Let's dive in. The morning of my 18th birthday dawned like any other. Sunlight, filtered through the oak tree outside my window, dappled across my white duvet. A robin chirped insistently, a cheerful soundtrack to what I expected to be a perfectly ordinary, celebratory day. Except, I was wrong. Terribly, irrevocably wrong. 18. A milestone. Adult. Free. The word echoed in my head, a promise of independence and the exciting, unknown future that lay ahead. I stretched, feeling the familiar aches and pops in my joints from my nightly dance rehearsals. I was a dancer, a devotee of movement, of expression through the body. It was my passion, my escape, my identity. My room, a sanctuary of posters, ballet shoes, and half-finished paintings, reflected that passion. The walls were a collage of colors, textures, and inspirations. A framed photograph of me and my best friend, Liam, grinning mischievously at the county fair, sat on my desk. Liam, my anchor, my confidant, knew me better than anyone. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon wafted up the stairs, a siren call to join the birthday festivities. I threw on a pair of jeans and a comfortable sweater, anticipation bubbling in my stomach. 18 meant more than just legal adulthood, it meant applying to the prestigious Blackwood Dance Academy in New York, a dream I'd nurtured since I was a little girl. Downstairs, the kitchen was a whirlwind of activity. My mom, Sarah, a whirlwind herself, was juggling pancake batter, bacon, and a stack of birthday cards. Her fiery red hair, usually neatly tied back, was already escaping its constraints. My dad, Mark, a quiet, steady presence, was meticulously arranging a bouquet of my favorite lilies on the table. "Happy birthday, sweetheart!" Mom exclaimed, engulfing me in a flower-dusted hug. 18. I can't believe it. Where did the time go? "Happy birthday, kiddo," Dad said, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. He placed a gentle kiss on my forehead. Big day. The breakfast was a feast. Pancakes piled high, crispy bacon, fresh fruit salad, and a chocolate cake adorned with 18 flickering candles. As I blew them out, I made a silent wish that my audition for Blackwood would be successful. The morning unfolded in a flurry of presents, cards, and well wishes. My grandparents called, singing a slightly off-key rendition of "Happy Birthday." Liam arrived with a handmade card and a promise of a celebratory dinner later that evening. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect, perhaps. It was after lunch, when the initial excitement had subsided, that Mom and Dad asked me to sit down. Their faces were unusually grave, their smiles replaced with a tense, almost apologetic expression. "There's something we need to tell you, Olivia," Dad began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. My stomach clenched. A cold dread seeped through me. I'd always been a perceptive child, attuned to the subtle shifts in mood and atmosphere. I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation about college funds or curfews. It's not easy to say," Mom added, her eyes welling up with tears. She reached out and took my hand, her grip surprisingly tight. My mind raced. Had something happened to Liam? Was someone sick? "Olivia," Dad said, taking a deep breath. "You know how much we love you, right? You're our everything." "Of course," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "Well," Mom continued, her voice trembling, "there's something you need to know about your origins. About how you came to be with us." My heart pounded in my chest. Origins. What did that even mean? "Olivia," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion, we adopted you." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The room seemed to tilt, the familiar surroundings suddenly alien and distorted. Adopted. The word echoed in my head, a stark and undeniable revelation that shattered the foundation of everything I thought I knew. I stared at them, my mind reeling. My parents. Sarah and Mark, the only parents I'd ever known. They weren't my biological parents. It was impossible. I saw Mom's red hair in mine, Dad's gentle eyes in my own reflection. Had I been living a lie for 18 years? "We should have told you sooner," Mom sobbed, squeezing my hand. "We wanted to wait until you were old enough to understand." to process it. But why? I stammered, my voice choked with emotion. Why didn't you tell me before? We were afraid, Dad admitted, his voice low. Afraid that it would change things, that you wouldn't love us the same way. That's ridiculous, I said, tears streaming down my face. I love you both. This doesn't change anything. But even as I said the words, a seed of doubt began to sprout within me. My entire perception of myself, of my identity, had been irrevocably altered. Who was I, really? Where did I come from? We have some information for you, Mom said, wiping her eyes. About your birth parents. If you want to know. I hesitated. Part of me desperately wanted to know everything, to unravel the mystery of my origins. But another part of me was terrified of what I might discover. What if my birth parents didn't want me? What if I didn't like them? What if finding them destroyed the life I already had? Okay, I said finally, my voice trembling. Tell me. They explained that I was found abandoned as a baby, left at the doorstep of a local church. The authorities had tried to locate my birth parents, but their efforts had been unsuccessful. Sarah and Mark, unable to have children of their own, had opened their hearts and their home to me. They had loved me, cherished me, and raised me as their own. They gave me a file containing the limited information they had, a copy of my original birth certificate, blank except for the date and time of birth. A photograph of the blanket I was wrapped in, and a letter from the social worker who had handled my case. I took the file, my hands shaking. It felt heavy, laden with secrets and unanswered questions. I needed to be alone, to process everything I had just learned. I need some time, I said, standing up. I'm going for a walk. I left the house, the file clutched tightly in my hand. The familiar streets of my small town suddenly felt foreign, as if I were seeing them through someone else's eyes. The oak tree outside my window, the robin chirping in its branches, the laughter of children playing in the park, everything seemed to mock my newfound uncertainty. I walked aimlessly, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, confusion, sadness, and a strange, unsettling sense of displacement. I ended up at the old abandoned mill on the outskirts of town, a place I often came to when I needed to think. The mill, a crumbling relic of a bygone era, stood silently amidst the overgrown weeds and tangled vines. It was a place of shadows and secrets, of whispers from the past. I sat down on a weathered stone bench, the file resting on my lap. I opened it, my hands trembling. The birth certificate was a stark reminder of my unknown origins. The photograph of the blanket, a faded and tattered piece of fabric, offered no clues. It was the letter from the social worker that caught my attention. The letter, dated 18 years ago, detailed the circumstances surrounding my abandonment. It also contained a note about a small, silver locket that was found pinned to my blanket. A locket that had never been mentioned by my adoptive parents. My heart skipped a beat. A locket. Why hadn't they told me about the locket? Driven by a sudden, inexplicable urge, I raced back home. I burst through the front door, startling Mom and Dad. The locket. I exclaimed, my voice breathless. The letter mentioned a locket. Why didn't you tell me about it? Mom and Dad exchanged a nervous glance. We didn't think it was important, Mom stammered. We must have forgotten. Forgotten. I repeated, incredulous. How could you forget something like that? Dad sighed. Olivia, we were trying to protect you. We didn't want you dwelling on the past. But it's my past. I retorted. I have a right to know. After a tense silence, Dad relented. He went upstairs and returned with a small, velvet box. He opened it, revealing a delicate, silver locket. It was intricately engraved with a pattern of swirling vines and tiny, blooming flowers. It looked old, perhaps even antique. I reached out and took it, my fingers tracing the delicate carvings. Where did you find it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It was pinned to your blanket, Dad said. Just like the letter said. I opened the locket. Inside, there were two tiny photographs. One was a picture of a young woman with long, dark hair and striking green eyes. The other was a picture of a man, his face partially obscured by a shadow. The woman's eyes. They were the same shade of green as mine. A jolt of recognition, a feeling of profound connection, surged through me. This was my mother. I knew it instinctively. But who was the man? And why had they abandoned me? I spent the rest of the day poring over the photographs, searching for clues, for answers. I showed them to Liam when he arrived for my birthday dinner. Liam studied the pictures carefully. The woman, she looks familiar, he said, frowning. I think I've seen her before. Where? I asked, my heart pounding. I'm not sure, he said. But I'll keep thinking. Maybe I saw her in a magazine or on TV. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed to find out who the woman in the photograph was. I started by searching online, using facial recognition software. But the results were inconclusive. The photograph was too old, too blurry. I then decided to visit the local library. I spent hours searching through old newspapers and magazines, hoping to find a picture of the woman. But I found nothing. Discouraged, I was about to give up when I noticed a dusty old book on the shelf. It was a history of the town, filled with photographs of local landmarks and prominent citizens. On a whim, I decided to flip through it. And then, I saw her. A photograph of the woman, younger but undeniably the same. She was standing next to a stately Victorian mansion, a sign identifying the building as the Willow Creek Manor. The caption read, Eleanor Ainsworth, owner of Willow Creek Manor, a local landmark and historical site. Ainsworth. The name resonated with me. I'd heard it before, whispered in hushed tones by the older residents of the town. The Ainsworths were an old, wealthy family, known for their reclusiveness and their mysterious past. Could Eleanor Ainsworth be my mother? It seemed impossible. But the resemblance was undeniable. I raced back home and showed the photograph to Mom and Dad. They stared at it in stunned silence. Eleanor Ainsworth. Mom said finally, her voice barely a whisper. But that's impossible. Why? I asked. What's so impossible about it? The Ainsworths they're different, Dad said, his voice hesitant. They're not like us. They keep to themselves. They don't associate with anyone. But she could be my mother, I insisted. I have to find out. Despite their reservations, Mom and Dad agreed to help me. They contacted a local private investigator, a gruff but experienced man named Mr. Harding. Mr. Harding took the photographs and promised to look into it. He warned me that it could take time, that the Ainsworths were notoriously private. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from Mr. Harding. I grew increasingly impatient, my anxiety gnawing at me. I couldn't focus on my dance rehearsals, my mind preoccupied with the mystery of my origins. One evening, Liam came over, his face flushed with excitement. I remember where I saw her, he exclaimed. The woman in the photograph. She was a dancer. A famous ballerina. Her name was Isabel Moreau. Moreau. The name rang a bell. I vaguely remembered hearing about a famous ballerina who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. I searched online for Isabel Moreau. And there she was. Photographs of her performing on stage, her movements graceful and ethereal. She was stunningly beautiful, with long, dark hair and striking green eyes. The same eyes as mine. But what was the connection between Isabel Moreau and Eleanor Ainsworth? And what had happened to her? The next day, Mr. Harding called. He had some information for me. He asked me to meet him at his office. I arrived at his office, my heart pounding in my chest. Mr. Harding was waiting for me, his face grim. I've done some digging, he said, and what I've found is complicated. He explained that Eleanor Ainsworth was indeed Isabel Moreau. She had changed her name years ago, after a tragic accident that had ended her dancing career. What kind of accident? I asked, my voice trembling. A stage accident, Mr. Harding said. She fell during a performance and suffered a severe spinal injury. She was never able to dance again. The accident had devastated her. She had withdrawn from the world, becoming a recluse in Willow Creek Manor. But why had she abandoned me? Mr. Harding explained that Isabel had been very young when she had me, and unmarried. The Ainsworth family was very strict and very concerned with its image. They pressured her to give me up for adoption to avoid a scandal. They forced her to abandon me. I asked, tears streaming down my face. I believe so, Mr. Harding said. But there's more. I found evidence that Isabel has been secretly watching you all these years. She knows about your dancing. She knows everything about you. He handed me an envelope. Inside, there was a letter. It was addressed to me, in Isabel's handwriting. I opened it, my hands shaking. My dearest Olivia, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means you have discovered the truth. I am your mother. I know this must be a shock, but please believe me when I say that I never wanted to abandon you. I was forced to do so by my family. I have watched you grow up from afar, my heart filled with pride and regret. I have seen you dance, and I know that you have inherited my passion. You are a gifted dancer, Olivia. You have a bright future ahead of you. I cannot ask for your forgiveness. I know that what I did was unforgivable. But I hope that one day, you will understand. I have always loved you, Olivia. And I always will. The letter ended with a postscript: if you ever want to meet me, I will be waiting for you at Willow Creek Manor. I stared at the letter, my mind reeling. My mother was alive. She had been watching me all these years. And she wanted to meet me. I knew what I had to do. I had to meet her. I drove to Willow Creek Manor, my heart pounding in my chest. The manor was a grand, imposing structure, surrounded by overgrown gardens and shrouded in an air of mystery. I rang the doorbell, my hand trembling. The door was opened by an elderly woman with a stern face. I'm here to see Eleanor Ainsworth, I said. The woman hesitated, then nodded. Come in, she said. She led me through a dimly lit hallway, lined with portraits of stern-looking men and women. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and decay. Finally, she stopped in front of a closed door. She's waiting for you, she said. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Inside, the room was filled with sunlight. Isabel was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, her face turned towards the light. She was older than the woman in the photograph, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with wrinkles. But her eyes were still the same shade of green. She turned to me, her eyes widening in recognition. Olivia, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Mom. I replied, tears streaming down my face. We stared at each other for a long moment, the silence broken only by the sound of our breathing. Then, she reached out her hand. I took it, and as our fingers intertwined, I felt a connection, a bond that transcended time and distance. I felt like I was finally home. The next few hours were a blur. Isabel told me everything about her life, about her dancing career, about the accident, about the pressure from her family to give me up. I told her about my life, about my dancing, about my dreams of going to Blackwood Dance Academy. We talked for hours, sharing stories, laughter, and tears. And as we talked, I began to understand her, to forgive her. She had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But she had suffered for it. And she had never stopped loving me. Before I left Willow Creek Manor that evening, Isabel gave me a gift. It was a pair of her old ballet shoes, the ones she had worn during her performances. These are for you, she said. I want you to have them. I want you to wear them when you audition for Blackwood. I took the shoes, my heart filled with gratitude. They were more than just shoes. They were a symbol of my mother's love, a legacy of her passion, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can always be found. The next day, I went to my audition for Blackwood Dance Academy. I wore Isabel's ballet shoes. And as I danced, I felt her presence with me, guiding me, inspiring me. I danced with all my heart, with all my soul. And when I finished, the judges erupted in applause. I got accepted into Blackwood Dance Academy. My life had changed in ways I never could have imagined. I had discovered the truth about my origins. I had found my birth mother. And I had achieved my dream of becoming a professional dancer. But the most important thing I had learned was that family is not just about blood. It's about love, about connection, about acceptance. Sarah and Mark would always be my parents. They had raised me, loved me, and supported me. And now, I had another mother, a woman who had given me life and who had never stopped loving me. I had two families now. And I was grateful for both of them. As I looked towards the future, I knew that there would be challenges ahead. But I also knew that I was not alone. I had my parents, my best friend, Liam, and my newfound birth mother, Isabel. And with their love and support, I knew that I could overcome anything. My 18th birthday had started with a shocking revelation. But it ended with a newfound sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of myself, and a profound appreciation for the power of love and family. And that was a birthday gift more precious than anything I could have ever imagined. The mystery of the locket had unlocked a whole new chapter in my life, a chapter filled with both heartache and hope, loss and love. And I was ready to embrace it, wholeheartedly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed our story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe for more awesome stories.